The NFL season is finally here. And no, I don't mean that slapdick preseason crap. I mean, it's happening this week. We finally have meaningful NFL action kicking off with the Cowboys and the Eagles, obviously, on Thursday night. I got to be honest with you. Kind of hate the fact that they're starting on Thursday night because that long break in between. I like the Thursday night game to be in the middle of the season, so they do get that long break, but it's when they kind of need the rest. But in this situation, I'm not a huge fan of it. But hey, Thursday night we get an Eagles game. Not only that, they're I don't know if you're aware of this, they're raising a banner for a Super Bowl that they won pretty easily, and they're doing it in front of the Cowboys. I do wonder if Jerry Jones is going to make the trip. If I were him, I would not. He's got his own banner to raise. 2025 Netflix champs can never take that away from him. I am going to do some bold predictions for you, some crazy ones for sure. But let's start out with the offensive rookie of the year. Now, I think a lot of people are just going to assume it's going to be Ashton Gennetti for very, I think, obvious reasons. They don't have a lot of weapons in Vegas. He was drafted really highly. It's an organization that doesn't. And I think also because of Saquon Barkley, I think most teams are now prioritizing running back like they haven't done in a lot of years. And Ashton Gennetti, obviously coming from Boise State, he was a stud over there. So they're going to rely on him a lot. Not picking him. I'm actually going to pick I'm not picking any of the wide receivers either. I am picking a guy that was the fourth running back taken. He was a third-round pick. I am taking Caleb Johnson from Iowa on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reason being is because with Pittsburgh, you now have Arthur Johnson running the offense in Pittsburgh. We have seen Arthur Johnson run as a head coach. We saw him run the Tennessee Titans. As the OC in Atlanta, we saw him run the Falcons offense, right? What did both offenses rely very heavily on? Two very talented running backs. Derrick Henry, obviously in Tennessee, that was a run-heavy offense. And then he goes down to Atlanta, and he's relying heavily on Bijan Robinson. Even though he did have some weapons there, like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, I don't know if you consider him a weapon or not. I still think that there's some untapped potential there. But, he was still relying heavily on smash-mouth football, if you will. I think he does the same thing with Caleb Johnson this year. I think also the fact that you do have a very, very, very aging, some would say cooked Aaron Rodgers under center. Even though they go trade for DK Metcalf, like we saw what happened with Aaron Rodgers when he did have elite wide receivers last year with the Jets. He had Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson basically put up the same numbers as if it was any quarterback. So I think you're going to see a decrease in the production level of DK Metcalf, but it's mainly because Arthur Johnson is kind of relying on Aaron Rodgers as if he were a game manager, because I think that's kind of what he is at this point. But you're going to see him rely solely on Caleb Johnson as, I think, the number one bell cow eventually, and I think he ends up winning Rookie of the Year. That's my bold take. That's my scorching hot take. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Abdul Carter, I guess. Look, he's a freak. He's an absolute freak. So just give it to him. Drafted number 2 overall for a reason. I'm not looking forward to playing Abdul Carter. The rest of the Giants I don't really care about. But, Malik Neighbors on the offense for the Giants and Abdul Carter are studs, you would think. So I'll just give it to him. But, that's the easy one. All right. Super Bowl prediction. Well, I can go MVP. I think MVP is going to no, you know what? No, I'm not going to do MVP. Because I didn't plan this. Hit thumbs down for that. I didn't plan to do MVP, and then I was like, do MVP because you did Offensive Rookie of the Year. We're not doing MVP. You know why? Because it's a quarterback league. Just pick a quarterback. I think after last year when you saw Saquon Barkley do what he did and it still went to a quarterback, you just go, you know what? Just name it the quarterback league. Name it the quarterback award, I mean. So, we're not going to do MVP. I would love to give you it's going to be, this guy, that guy. It'll be Joe Burrow. I don't know. But let's go to the Super Bowl. I am on record as saying I think the Eagles are absolutely loaded again this year. I think that the Eagles are going to be in a situation where we are going to see a repeat of the 2022 season, whatever year they went to the Super Bowl and lost the Chiefs the first time. That year where they were just dumbing teams. I think we're going to see a repeat of that. I think that I'm not one to say that I think Washington's going to take a step back. They are older, obviously, and you could theoretically see a scenario where Jaden Daniels takes a step back. But even if he doesn't, I think we saw what happened when the Eagles during the playoff game, where Jaden Daniels leads the Commanders down the field. They score long drive, and the Eagles are like, "Oh, that's cute." Saquon, do me a favor, go match that, and they did, and they hammered him. I think the best thing that happened to the Eagles was that they actually lost that game in Washington to Jaden Daniels because they had that game. That game should have been over, and they dealt with some injuries in that game. And I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson got kicked out of that game, I believe. But I think it was good for them because it was like, no, like this kid is a little bit different. This kid meaning Jaden Daniels. But I'm still not exactly worried about their team yet, even with the additions of Deebo Samuel. I'm not there. The rest of the division is horrible. The Giants are trash. The Cowboys, please. So it's really a two-horse race between the Eagles and the Commanders, and I think it's going to be easily the Eagles. I think when you look at the competition in the NFC, it is the Eagles are by far the superior team, and then you have like a tick below would be Detroit, a healthy Detroit team, because you got to remember Detroit was so banged up last year. And then below that is Green Bay. And I think Green Bay and Detroit beat up on each other a little bit. But the Eagles, I think, are far and away the best team in the NFL. I think they're absolutely loaded. Do they have some holes because of, positions that they needed to get rid of? Yeah, of course. Like, you lose Darius Slay, you lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Those are holes you got to fill, obviously. But I think you're going to see a different level of Jalen Carter this year in year 3. I think he really takes a step that if you didn't know, now you're about to find out. I can't wait to see more Ojomo, more of him. I'm not a big fan of Jordan Davis at all. They picked up his 5th-year option. I think a big part of the reason why they did that is because apparently at Georgia he was like the guy that would keep Jalen Carter in check. Obviously, Jalen Carter drops down to number 9 overall because of off-the-field issues, not on-the-field issues. And it was solely because of on-the-field issues. And to keep a guy in the locker room that will kind of keep him on the straight path, which is apparently what Jordan Davis did in Georgia, I don't have a problem with. But the reality is the player of Jordan Davis is a very mediocre player. And I don't think people realize it because, A, he was a first-round draft pick. B, the team is absolutely loaded and they win a lot of games. So you just assume, oh, well, everybody must be playing well. He's not even Mike Patterson level good. He's not. He was outplayed last year by far by Milton Williams and Moro Ojomo. And I think you're going to see it again this year. And I do wonder what happens after this year. Do they move on from him because of the connection with Jalen Carter? He hasn't earned, in my opinion, a second contract with his play on the field, but I don't know what he adds in the locker room. But to me, he's been an absolute abject disappointment. And my lasting memory of him is going to be that play that he had against Buffalo 2 seasons ago, where he was able to track down Josh Allen, and it was a great play, but then he was gassed at the end. And I think that's a prime example of Jordan Davis. Like, it's like every year it's the same thing. He's out of shape. He can't really stay on the field. And you look at the snap count, it's like they don't really trust him. So he does kind of like one thing okay, but when you trade up to get a guy like that, and this is what you're getting from it, and he's getting outplayed consistently by backups that eventually leapfrog him on the depth chart, concerning to me. But that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to see Moro Ojomo. I think Moro Ojomo is the real deal. I don't think Jalen Carter is, or Jalen Carter. I don't think Jordan Davis is, but I think Jordan Davis is a good backup. And I'm excited to see a little bit of the depth there. But I think over in the AFC, I think Baltimore ends up winning the AFC. I could be lazy and say the Bills, but the reality is the Bills are what the Eagles were in the early 2000s with Andy Reid. Like, they can't get over the hump. There's some disconnect there, and I think we're going to see them once again get in their own way, because that seems like what Buffalo does. It cracks me up, because you had a situation where if Buffalo could have just adequately performed the push in the playoffs against the Chiefs, they would have won that game. They would have went on to the Super Bowl. They have a 6'5", chiseled out of granite quarterback, huge guy, and they can't do it. And then their coach has the audacity in the offseason to try to vote against the tush push, brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. He votes against it, saying something very, no, dude, you suck at it. Your team's horrible at it. You tried it, like many other people, like the Packers with Jordan Love, who also voted against it. You guys tried it. You can't successfully do it. Teach your guys to do it correctly. teach your quarterback who's huge to not get tackled, maybe you would have been in the Super Bowl. But, Sean McDermott's always been baby shit soft, and that's why I can't stand the guy, and he's a weasel, and I wish him nothing but the worst. So, no, I'm not picking Buffalo. I will pick Baltimore. I think Buffalo will eventually get in their own way. And I think with the Chiefs, I think, all these subtractions, they had to trade a key member of their offensive line, and, Travis Kelce's a year older, and he wasn't even that good last year. Rasheed Rice is out for, the first 6 weeks of the season. I understand Patrick Mahomes is going to make other guys better around him. Patrick Mahomes wasn't that great last year. When you look at his numbers and whatnot, he wasn't Patrick Mahomes level. So you look at, I think that's a team that has a lot of holes, and I think they might take a step back. Consider this, though. The last time I said the Chiefs were going to take a step back, they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year, so what the fuck do I know? But one bold prediction I have for the upcoming year is that Saquon Barkley does not break Eric Dickerson's rushing record. Saquon Barkley does not even touch 2,000 yards. And the reason I say that, the sole reason, and by the way, I would love to be wrong about both those things. The reason I say it is because I said earlier, I think we're about to revert back to the Eagles in 2022 when they were just absolutely obliterating teams. And if you remember about that season, what they did was they would be up by so much that they had the luxury of pulling their starters. Kind of like, by the way, if you remember, kind of like what they did in the Super Bowl. They pulled their starters. The difference is they didn't have a game next week. That's what made it even more awesome. In this situation, the Eagles would be pulling their starters with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter because they were up by so much, and they would be saving them for the next week. And what you end up having is a game of your starting players playing, 3 quarters and some change. That's going to take away some yardage opportunities for Saquon Barkley. He had that a little bit last year against the Giants. Obviously, there's that clip that runs around where Nick Sirianni asked him, look, if you want the record, I'll give it to you. And he's like, no, let the young guys eat. I think we see more of that this year, which takes away opportunities from him. In the long run, it's good for the team because those are just dividends that you stack up, and by the end of the season, and you add up the time, and you're like, whoa, our starters essentially saved, let's say, a game and a half because the coaching staff pulled him. I shit on Nick Sirianni a lot. I think that's one of the things that he does really well is he has a good feel for all right, let's get our starters out. This game's at hand. I know the quarterback hates it. They're up by 150 in the Super Bowl, and he's like, you sure? But I think that's one of the reasons why he ends up missing out on Eric Dickerson's rushing record and the 2,000 yards. It's not like he couldn't do it. I think we're going to look back and go yeah, all right, he absolutely could have if he had the opportunities. But in the long game, it's a smart move. He was just named the number 1 player by his peers, and deservedly so. I mean, I love seeing this dude behind an actual offensive line. For me, Saquon Barkley's got to feel like Andy Dufresne. He went through 5 years of a shit tunnel with New York and that offensive line, and then he gets out, and he's just like, thank you, God, I have an offensive line. So those are some predictions for you for the NFL this year. I think the Jags do fairly well. I mean, that's not a great division. I think they've made some decent moves. But most of that has to do with just the bad division. I don't know. I mean, those are pretty much it. I think the Eagles end up winning the Super Bowl again. And I'm begging you out there, if you are an Eagles fan, say it with your chest. I think we have this mentality in Philly where we are preconditioned to expect the worst. And one of the reasons why is because I'm a millennial. I grew up with those Andy Reid's teams that every year we would psych ourselves up. We'd be like, this is the year. And it wasn't. And you'd get to the NFC Championship game and you'd find a way to lose. Or someone would get injured. Or whatever would happen, right? And so it built this feeling of don't get too excited because you're going to be disappointed. And I think now what you're seeing is fans my age still have that. They still harbor that feeling that we need to get rid of completely. We need to start acting like, and we don't have that cachet yet, but we need to start acting like the Patriots fans, the obnoxious, cocky, arrogant Patriots fans, where we're just going to say it with our chest. And we're going to believe that this team is who they actually are. I got asked recently, do you fear that this team is going to be the team after they went to the Super Bowl, they lost the Chiefs the first time, the next year they were a disaster? I don't worry about that necessarily at all, because I think that this current team, a lot of the guys still leadership core wise, they're all back essentially, and they remember that, and I don't think they let that happen again. But I think we as a fan base need to get cocky. I've told this story before, but I'm at a Super Bowl party. Eagles go up 24-0 before the half, and I correctly said this game is fucking over. and I had some girl, I don't know who she was, but she was like, you can't say that. You remember that one Super Bowl with the Patriots? You can't say. And I looked at her and I was like, if you want to argue, like, go argue with a wall. This isn't that game. The Eagles aren't that team, okay? They've shown you this entire season and the playoffs, by the way, who the fuck they are. Put your dick on the table and say with your chest, like, this team's a juggernaut. So if you want to go argue about whether this game's over or not, there's a wall. You can argue with that. I'll see you on Broad Street in 2 hours. Guess where we are? In 2 hours, we were on Broad Street. So I think we need to have that mentality this year going into the season. But I'm excited for it. I can't wait. Very pumped. Go Birds as always. Like, subscribe. You guys know the deal. I need subscribers. So, I'm gonna go now.